biased laws, fathers not made a priority in society, false allegations, the feminist movement, things like that. And without further ado, I'd like to bring on my two guests tonight, Eric Carroll from Dad Talk Today and Melissa Isaac, attorney at law with the Isaac Law Firm from Montgomery, Alabama. Welcome, Eric and Melissa. How you guys doing?
What's going on, John?
Doing great.
Doing real well. Sun is shining and hoping to get over this coronavirus epidemic out there so that we can go out and enjoy the beautiful spring weather.
I hear that, man. It's definitely been a mess here lately.
Yeah, I think you got everybody in every state waiting to do the same thing. Everybody's held up.
Is spring happening down there in Georgia and in Alabama?
It is. It's happening beautifully. In fact, it's odd because during the quarantine, I see more people out and about than I did before. So, but yeah, quarantine doesn't seem to be holding people back. They're home from work, but they're out enjoying the weather.
Right. How about you, Eric?
Same thing, man. I don't know. I'm out in the sticks, so I have been staying at home trying to do my part and just sitting back and waiting for the coast to clear.
Well, God bless you guys. I want to start off today. I listed some topics, so let's start at the top. Obstacles to fatherhood. Either one of you want to chime in on that?
Well, I know what it's like to be a father and to want to be a father, and not gave that chance. I definitely feel like the family law system definitely is very oppressive to fathers. What
do you think, Melissa? Obstacles, right, to fatherhood.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I agree with Eric 100%. There's legal obstacles and there's societal obstacles. There's a lot of obstacles because nowadays, men are expected to be men and men are expected to be good providers and produce, but yet men are expected to really support whatever it is that their wife wants to do. So I think it's difficult for men to know exactly where they fit right now. And, the court really doesn't value fathers as parents. You look at child support courts. I mean, there's absolutely no consideration given at all to fathers' involvement in children. It's all about child support. So there are many obstacles for men, and it really boils down to, I'll tell you what, if men have a baby with the wrong woman, they just signed up for about 18 years of heartache.
Absolutely. Believe me, that's happening all over. What about the destruction of the traditional marriage?
Oh, I think you look at back when maybe our grandparents were married, it really assumed that women would stay home and they would provide. Men were the ones who traditionally joined the military, and there were stay-at-home moms. And I think people could rely on that. Society relied on that. Children relied on that. And that was back when you could actually have a life with one income, where, with one income, you could buy a house and have a car and have everything you need and take vacations. Well, you look at the feminist movement that wave through, and look, I benefited from the feminist movement. But if you look at the true definition of feminism, it's gender equality and opportunity. And of course, one thing about pendulums is they swing. And with the feminist movement, the pendulum swung way too far. So now we have the traditional marriage. What does that mean anymore? Does it mean that both parents work? You have a lot of stay-at-home moms that get vilified, and they're, made fun of for being stay-at-home moms. So, and can a man really make a good salary and support his family just with him alone? So you look at the traditional marriage and the way the family courts have financially incentivized women to divorce their husbands. It's a tragedy, and the statistics and the effects of the destruction of the traditional marriage is apparent right now in society. We've never had more issues with kids than we're having right now.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, welfare is an enabler of that with a lot of these women. Okay,
absolutely,
and they don't want that to stop. So it's a real quagmire. Eric, what did you go ahead? I'm sorry, Melissa, go ahead.
So you look at my own mother for a perfect example. So I have two sisters, and growing up, we grew up on welfare. I mean, I was on welfare my entire life. But for her being a single mother to us, she wouldn't have gotten those welfare benefits. I didn't have to grow up on welfare. I could have grown up with my father, who had a good job, who was able to provide. But because at that point, a man getting custody is difficult nowadays, much less you go back to the 80s. But, but for the state financially incentivizing her, I probably would have had a better childhood, and she maybe could have gotten a job.
Amen to that. Eric, what have you seen with all the interviews you do on Dad Talk today? I'm sure that you've seen and kind of had your finger on the pulse of men and probably women as well. How does that speak to the destruction of the traditional marriage?
Absolutely, brother. I mean, John, I am a custodial and I'm a non-custodial. I have custody of 2 of my daughters, and then I know what it's like to be on the non-custodial side. As a custodial father and getting rights to my children, I had to fight tooth and nail. And as a non-custodial, to even be able to see my children as a father, I have to fight tooth and nail. And it shouldn't be that way. If parents are made equal and we both have equal access, we both came into this world and made this child, we should both be able to come to the table and parent that child. Unfortunately, it's just not going that way for a lot of these fathers. They've got stereotypes against him as this deadbeat that doesn't want anything to do with his child. Oh, he was abusive. He was a sexual, there's many sexual allegations going around. And then if that father actually fights back and says, you know what, that's not who I am. I want my child. Then you get painted as the angry dad. So it's like either way, it's a lose-lose situation going on inside the family law courts for fathers right now. And it's a really tough battle if you want to begin your children's life.
Yeah, it really is. And the smear campaign, the grievance industry is thriving out there, as you know. We'll be right back in a moment with Eric Carroll and Melissa Isaac. See you on the other side, America. Welcome back. We're with Eric Carroll and Melissa Isaac. Guys, one of the thoughts that I know that we wanted to discuss today was bias courts and bias laws. I want Melissa to kind of speak a little bit about that from a legal point of view as our legal analyst. Melissa, what are you seeing on the ground now that you did or didn't see even 5 years ago when it pertains to, the courts and our bias laws?
Well, really, not much has changed over the last 5 years in terms of the laws. What is slowly changing is the application of the laws, because the laws are written to be gender neutral. In terms of divorces, not so much when it comes to paternity, but we have some older judges who have told me, look, I just feel like kids belong with moms, and I know your position, I can respect it, but I just think that little kids, belong with moms. Well, those judges are now retiring, and we're getting new judges on the bench who are younger and who are more educated and who are slowly, the bench is getting better. We're making better decisions where there's true equality. And a big problem is a lot of lawyers and who then become judges. They say, well, this is the way it's always been done. Well, there's even case law that says just because that's the way it's always been done doesn't mean it's right. So there has been some change in terms of getting some younger judges on the bench who do see parenting as something that should be done equally, absent some sort of unfitness of the parents. But we look at unmarried dads. So as soon as a mother has a child, she doesn't have to fight for those rights. She has all rights to that baby. So even, what I find odd is even if a woman is married, in the hospital, she has all final decision-making. Even if she's married, that dad doesn't have final decision-making. It's up to the mother. But it's worse with unmarried dads. So this child is born, the mother has 100% control. Even if that father signs an affidavit of paternity, acknowledgement of paternity, does the paperwork to get his name on the birth certificate, that alone is not enough to have himself legally established as that child's father and get rights. So especially with unmarried dads, it's so important that they have to take these additional steps to maintain any sort of parental rights whatsoever. But it's difficult because even if a child, if an unmarried father lives with that child, raises that child for 5 years, 10 years, the mother can still take that child and take off, and it's still a fight for that dad. So no, when we look at especially child support and paternity, it is not fair to fathers at all, not at all.
Well, and I know that we had talked a couple days ago when we had Cardinal Smith on about the automatic assumption, assuming that the woman is constitutionally protected and that she's the one. I know you kind of talked about that on that show. Speak to that for a minute,
Okay.
Melissa.
All right. So the Supreme Court of the United States has said that the right to parent your child, the right to raise your child, is a fundamental constitutional right. Well, that fundamental constitutional right is something that men have to fight for, especially if they're unmarried, and it's something that women, it's presumed for. So it's presumed for them. So this child is born, and that woman, it's presumed that she has all her constitutional rights. It's presumed that she's a fit parent. Well, that's not the same way for fathers. An unmarried dad, unless that mother, right, bestows those rights upon him and agrees to it and grants him those rights, if she fights it and says, you know what, no, I don't want to give you equal rights to this child, she just can say, listen, I just don't think it's in this child's best interest, and then he's in for a fight where he's paying attorneys. So, so it should be, there should be a presumption. If you are that child's biological mother or biological father, it should be presumed that you are fit. And it should be up to the other parent to prove that the other person is unfit.
Yes.
So I understand. You know, we know that there's unfit fathers. We know there's unfit mothers. But for the court not to presume, not to give you that constitutional protection, you share DNA. The Supreme Court case is clear. So both parents should have that constitutional protection, that constitutional presumption, and not hold one gender over the other in courts, because that's exactly what happens.
I completely agree. Eric, obviously in your own situation and all the dads that you deal with on your show, what are you hearing from them, and how do you feel about these bias courts, these bias laws? Are you seeing the younger judges come on? Are you seeing a difference?
Oh man, it's happening all the time. It's not anything that's like a big surprise to anybody. It's just expected in a normal everyday society. I'll tell you what, again, you know what it was like for me the first time I was a custodial father. I was raising 2 girls on my own, and I was going to fight for another child. I go to a lawyer after saving up some money. I pay him $400 to consult with him for an hour, John. And when I go to leave, he told me, my best bet or my best advice for you is to get back with her. Oh, really? I said, well, that's not happening. So I go to another lawyer, all right, and I consult with him. He said, you've got a great case, one of the best ones. It shouldn't take much, but I'm going to need $10,000 on retainer.
Of course.
And then it was like, okay, I just gave up hope. It was like I felt like there was no options for me. There's nothing I can do. I want to be a father, but they're not going to allow me to be a father. And that's what you're seeing, especially with a lot of these dads that we're talking to. They either give up hope. A lot of them are committing suicide because they feel like, you know what? I'm just a slave to the system. They make me a paycheck. They won't let me be a father, but they'll take my money, and then they won't give me time with my kids. I'm living to work, and I never get ahead, and they feel like there's no reason for them to exist anymore. And this system is the one that's creating those deadbeats, and they're responsible for a lot of these suicides.
Well, and, you know, when you talk about going to the first lawyer, there's, you know, $400 down the drain, right?
Gone.
$400 that could have been used to give to the child.
Yep.
Now you go see another lawyer. He wants 10 grand. And, you know, it's crazy. All that money thrown down the drain, which ultimately doesn't get you anywhere with helping your child. So
it's an industry that has very little to do with justice and has very little to do with the best interests of the child, which the courts like to hide behind. So divorce is an industry, and you have attorneys, and you have judges, and you have social workers, you have guardian ad litem, you have attorney ad litem, you have parenting coordinators. I could go on and on. There's so many people making money in this industry that the court of law, a place of justice, has lost the sense of justice. So here we have kids who we know, we have the research out there that says that if children are separated from their parents, that it causes trauma, it's detrimental. We know that if children are raised without their fathers, it's detrimental, yet everything is allowed to continue.
Yeah, it's insane is what it is. And you just laid it out perfectly, Melissa. We'll be right back, America. We're back with Eric Carroll and Melissa Isaac to continue on in this wonderful conversation. Sad that we have to talk about it, but needed. And you both know that we're going to continue to talk about this. So we're not going to fit everything in today, obviously, but through our panels and dealing with this issue that I care so much about, it's going to continue. We're going to keep the conversation open and continue to have this dialogue. So the next thing here that I would want to talk about, how about fathers not being made a priority by society?
Oh, absolutely. And I think let's go back to child support courts and, where their main focus is establishing paternity, which most of the time the men have to pay for, right? For the test to establish paternity, even though this woman should or shouldn't know exactly who the putative fathers are. And there are, you should see these courts. There are men lined up on one side. There's women lined up on the other side. There's social workers or district attorneys in the middle calculating child support. And when men ask, well, what about me being able to see my child? They say, that's another court. We don't deal with that here. So the courts don't make a priority. A man can file a motion and say, listen, I want visitation with my child. Why is it 6 months, 9 months, 2 years before they get a hearing? These things should be streamlined. They should be made a priority. And they're not.
Sure. And like you mentioned before the break, it almost appears, if you're going through this yourself out there, that the courts don't want to change.
No,
they don't.
Because of the money, right? It always comes down to the money. And they don't want that money flow to stop. So I'm sure they like the way things are. But we're here to say, no, enough. Let's look at this. Let's reevaluate this. Let's bring some of these draconian laws and policies current using some common sense. How do you feel, Eric, as a father? Do you feel like you're made a priority out there?
Oh, absolutely not. But I think this might not be exactly PC, but when you live in a society that doesn't even know what their gender is, it's hard to assume what your parental role is. I mean, it
gets confusing, doesn't it?
It's a little bit confusing. We don't know if they're mom or dad. I've heard a lot of fathers say, I just need to go identify as mom. Maybe I get a fair shake inside a family court. And as asinine as that sounds, I mean, it makes a lot of sense. And they might be on the other side of this.
As insane as that is, think about how mixed up a child is hearing that from a so-called parent that is obviously off their rocker. It's just insanity to me. What about false allegations, Melissa?
We see false allegations all the time. And one of the most frustrating things is you can have, in my case, I have women make claims. We can show the claim to be false. We can show the claim to be untrue. And when you bring up any sort of sanctions from the court, really typically what I get is the proverbial shoulder shrug. Okay, so the allegations are unfounded, so let's just go about it. Well, if the court would start actually enforcing the punishments for perjury, then perhaps the false allegations would stay out, because I understand there's two sides of a story. But when you have one person saying, I wasn't even in the state when this allegation happened, and you have another person saying, he came to my house and threatened me and beat me. Okay, someone is lying.
Right.
The thing is, it's easy to prove when someone is out of the state. And I'm a huge fan of security systems. And so these are the things that bring truth, right? So sometimes I'll even tell my clients, they say, my wife beats me. And you wouldn't believe, it is sad how many men are victims of physical violence.
Sure. It happens, right? Nobody wants to talk about, though. And you know why? Because here's a more assumption. They automatically assume and presume that if a woman is physically assaulting a man, that the man can protect himself. But as soon as the man does protect himself, then he's going to jail, right?
Double standards.
It's a losing situation, and I know, Eric, for a fact that you've heard all of the false allegations that are out there, all of the made up nonsense by the grievance industry, and we'll get into the feminist movement here in a moment. But what do you hear? What are some of the outlandish things you're hearing?
I've got one father, John, in the state of Texas. He has fought off 45 false CPS allegations in the past 10 years. 45, not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 45. And how they continue to allow this same person to make that allegation after time and time again, it's been proved that this father didn't do this. He's going up against one of the richest women in America, but it shows you what has influence inside of our court systems right now. And it's not your parental rights. It's about who's got the most money.
Here's what's disturbing to me about that. 45 times, right?
45.
So 45 times. Here's my question. And if I was a lawyer, which I'm not, my mom wanted me to go to law school, but I didn't do it because I had a friend that was a judge and another attorney friend that told me not to do it. But Melissa's here, and think about that. What is going on with common sense? Okay, 45 times is absurd. It's excessive. It's like after the 5th time, you would think that the court officers might get together with the judge and say, look, this doesn't make sense here. We keep seeing this. Is it possible we should investigate this further and see if this person's lying? So it just shows you, that's proof that there is a lack of common sense, and it makes no sense.
Absolutely, John.
It gets me upset. I'm sorry.
It's okay, my man. And that's the thing. The court should be the place that if it has to escalate to that, that option right there, they should be the ones that are protecting the children. But unfortunately, we've got cases like the younger case there in Texas, where a 7-year-old, the mom is trying to transition him into a little girl. They're trying to give him a sexual transition at the age of 7 years old. And the courts actually ruled in her favor at one point in time. This father had to do everything in his might and get it escalated to Ted Cruz before anything happened. And I just don't understand it. What is going on in our society where
I think we hit on it a few minutes ago. It's this.
That's exactly what it is.
Because there's no other logical answer, is there?
No.
Listen, let's talk about the feminist movement, because the feminist movement is insane with hypocrisy, lies, smears. Melissa, what are you seeing out there?
Well, so the feminist movement perplexes me because the feminist movement says, I am woman, hear me roar. I am woman, I'm independent. I don't need you. I don't need your protection. But yet you swing the other way and the feminists say, we need protection from males because all men are predators. We need laws in the workplace because women need to advance. We need this, we need this, we need that. We need child support. We need alimony. Wait a minute. Do you need it or do you not need it? Are you an independent woman who can take care of your own business, or are you not? It's one or the other. So the feminist movement has become so hypocritical that most women won't identify and won't even call themselves a feminist. This is the sad thing, is you look at Webster's dictionary. The definition of feminism definition of feminist, yeah, I agree with it. I agree. I believe in equality for the genders. That's what I agree with. But I agree with freedom of opportunity. But I do not need a law in place that allows me to get into law school easier. I don't need a law in place that where I get more grant money than maybe Eric would because I'm a woman. So if we're looking at gender equality, then that's what we should be going for, gender equality. No deference, no laws that give me the upper hand, because that's really what feminists now are advocating for, is the upper hand. But you look at what the feminist movement has done to society. Boys are now starting to fail. Okay, there's not enough men in not as many men that are in college. Their math scores are down. There's more boys that are being raised without fathers. There's no father figures. They're emasculated in Hollywood. And this is having a real effect, a detrimental effect. But the problem is women need to reclaim that title of feminism and feminist, and they need to inject common sense into it because it's gone. It's become absurd.
As far as the numbers go, and I've been looking at it very closely in the workforce, at graduation rates, all that, the women own the numbers.
They do.
Okay. They own the numbers. And it tells you that, and I agree with you, Melissa, that the woman wants this and that at the same time. What they want is their cake and to be able to eat it too.
Absolutely.
Right? They want it all.
Yes.
And man be damned.
Man be damned. You're right.
Superiority versus equality. We're talking about equality here. They want superiority.
They do.
Yeah.
And I take issue with a lot of these sexual allegations, sexual assault allegations that came out of Hollywood. Some of these women where they were exchanging sexual favors for chances at interviews, for chances at movie roles. You don't go back 20 years later and say, oh, by the way, I was sexually assaulted. No, you're an opportunist.
Right.
And you didn't land that movie role.
Yeah, they don't want to talk about that, do they,
Melissa? They don't. They sure don't.
Yeah, it's very convenient. And it seems like there's a pattern here. We talked about the judge's case. You talk about Justice Kavanaugh, his case. You see it in all these cases out in Hollywood. And all these so-called victims, they never speak up until they've made their money.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right?
Right.
That's the pattern. Let me get paid first, then let me see if I can make more money by filing a grievance against this person or that person. It's totally insane.
We're in the business of litigating hurt feelings. We're in the business of litigating perceived oppression when it's not. It's not. I'm sorry. If a woman says, hey, look, I'll come over there and I'll be your lady of the evening in exchange for you setting me up, the chance to be an actress in a movie.
Right.
It's not sexual assault.
Right. Yeah. And you see it with athletes too.
Oh, because, yes.
You see all these cases on college campuses. You don't know which ones are real, which ones aren't anymore. You don't know the truth because it's so clouded. It's so fuzzy. It's just nuts.
I'd like to say it too, my man. A lot of what backs the feminist movement is the domestic violence movement. Okay. Yeah. You don't see men on the billboards when they're talking about domestic violence. You always see woman as the victim. Here's the facts though. Half of domestic violence is happening to men. Why aren't they putting them on the billboard? It's because they want to paint a certain picture, and society as a whole has painted the mom, the woman as the victim, and the man as the perpetrator. And we're seeing that inside a family court.
Yeah. And by the way, I don't want to minimize the women out there that really are
absolutely not
treated wrong. That's not, because listen, I love women. And Melissa Isaac's one of the strongest women I know. Mm-hmm. We don't have to go there. Let's just be honest. Mm-hmm. Let's have an honest conversation. Let's use common sense and let's be truthful, right? That's a lost art, a lost concept. Tell the truth, okay? We know what's happening. We know that there are bad women and that there are bad men, but you can't paint everybody with the same brush, and you can't automatically assume and presume that it's one way or the other. Show me the evidence.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Right, Melissa?
Absolutely. Allegations are not evidence; they're allegations. Absolutely.
I want to thank you guys for coming on tonight. It's been a great show. We'll dig into this more the next time that that we gather this panel. Thanks a lot, Eric. Thanks, Melissa.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back, America. Welcome back to Indivisible. As you can see, this topic is one that'll go on. And because it's so near and dear to my heart, we're going to continue to talk about these issues related to children and families, custody, child support, the courts, the bias, the allegation, the movements out there that are hurting our kids, just unnecessary stuff. But it's just troubling, because if we could get a hold of some of this and sit down and hash it out and start doing the right things, we could streamline this. We could use common sense to make some of these laws better and get rid of some of these biases. It is all about the money, and people can say whatever they want to say, but that's the fact. And we have to get money out of the equation. That should not take precedent over loving our kids, giving them an opportunity to live in a great country. Thanks for joining us tonight. We'll see you tomorrow night, America.